these categories that were put in for, let's say, marketing purposes of getting either Aruba vacation ads or University of Phoenix ads, they're based on our behavior as the internet perceives it, as devices that crawl the internet perceive it. Is that where the data is coming from? Our performance, our activity on the internet.
I'll draw you a landscape of the data industry, the data marketplace. There are three big companies in the world, in this world. There's Amazon. Amazon doesn't sell your information. It collects your information as you buy stuff. There's Facebook. Facebook doesn't sell your information directly, although it sells categories of people to advertisers, and that's how it makes money. So it doesn't say, hey, Kathy O'Neill is a woman with a PhD, white, living in New York. It doesn't do that. But if you want to advertise to white women in New York who's 45 years old, then you'll find me, right? They also, I think, buy information from data warehousing companies, which we're going to talk about in a second. And then there's Google, who doesn't sell your information either, but does indirectly sell your information to advertisers through categories like Facebook. And I don't think Google buys data elsewhere. And then outside those three big companies, who are like islands that collect data, they don't sell data, they collect data, and they use data, but they don't sell it. Then there's just an enormous industry of secondhand data markets, which is to say, if you go to sort of any site outside those three companies, there are things called pixels where third-party data gathering companies will bombard you with cookies, and they'll track you, and they'll see, oh, I saw you at footlocker.com, and now I'm seeing you at Zazzle.com, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And then they collect all this information about you. There's hundreds and hundreds of those companies that do that. And they sell that information to big data warehousing companies like Axiom. And Axiom is I think, the biggest data warehousing company that collects all this information, as well as scraping public records. And then it creates profiles for every consumer in the country. Axiom has a profile on everybody. And then Axiom then is a middleman, and it turns around and sells those profiles to companies that are interested, like insurance companies probably buy that, probably large employers like Walmart. I don't know exactly who the customers of Axiom are because it's a secret. So I don't want to say something incorrect, but they are the middleman, and they are a very profitable company that buys data about you and sells profiles to other people.
And this may not be in your wheelhouse, but does do not track, does tracking, ad blocking, does all these devices that have grown up to supposedly grant internet users a scintilla of privacy, do they keep you out of that marketplace, or does that just thin your data flow to the data merchandisers?
So ad blockers doesn't thin anything. Ad blockers just doesn't let you see it at the end of the day, the advertising. But it doesn't prevent a future potential employer to buy information about you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So ad blockers just is a way of kind of ignoring something, but it doesn't stop tracking as far as I know at all. Mm-hmm. I might be wrong about that. There's the do not track. You could set your browser to do not track. It is not, it's not honored. Nobody honors that as far as I know. It's just ignored. So that's you're asking nicely and they're ignoring you. You're tracked. But I'll say something, which is that I don't really care about that for myself. And I'm going to go back to what I was saying about the VC and what he made me realize is that this system isn't going to hurt me. I mean, I'm not saying it will never hurt me at all, but I'm saying I'm not the victim here. Mm-hmm. The victims are the people who have their demographics working against them in multiple ways. And they're the ones that are in every algorithmic system deemed the losers. So going back to for-profit colleges for a second, they're not just looking for poor people. They're looking for poor people that are also unaware of how college works. So they don't, specifically for people who don't know the difference between private colleges and for-profit colleges. Mm-hmm. They think public colleges sounds not as good as private or for-profit. And there are people like this, and they're often like parents of immigrants. They're often, people whose parents didn't go to college in general, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So they're ignorant in a certain sense, but they know, the one thing they do know is that if they want to be a real citizen of the middle class, they have to go to college. Mm-hmm. So they are vulnerable to the pitch. And so it's you were saying about tribes, it's not just that they're poor. They have to be poor, by the way, because otherwise they won't be eligible for federal aid. And this, as I said, it's a federal aid gaming system. Nobody who's not poor would ever be approached by for-profit colleges. They're only interested in that. But it's not just that. You have to intersect two things. You have to intersect being poor and being ignorant. And so that's where you really get the predatory behavior. And it's not just for-profit colleges. You also have payday lenders doing exactly the same kind of thing. Looking for vulnerable people who have no other options.
Low information voters, I think the phrase is in some circles.
Yeah, that's a sort of equivalent in the world of politics.
Yeah, but there's something else that goes into the mix for for-profit colleges, isn't there? A desire to get ahead, improve yourself. I mean, that's got to be measured. Is that measured in some way? Is that part of the tribe that you're put in by the data miners, or does that show up anywhere?
Certainly, yes, absolutely. I mean, and in fact, like the real way this works is, the way Google ads are sold is by auction and by keywords. So definitely the for-profit colleges are paying big bucks for keywords such as college, go to college, where can I go to college, phrases like that. But they're particularly interested in a certain demographic.
Yeah. So in a sense, you're being punished for being ambitious, but in the wrong demographic.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating book. And you have some suggestions at the end for ways to deal with this, so the picture is not all bleak. Have you had any feedback or blowback from the industry after this book was published?
I haven't. I was expecting more than I got. I've gotten a lot of sheepish data scientists saying, "Wow, I'd never really thought about it." I've got a lot of silence. I'm starting to feel a little pushback from the tech giants indirectly. I think there's just an enormous amount of interest right now in antitrust law and whether it can try to push back against the power of Google and Facebook. And I have strong opinions about that. One of the things I call for near the end of the book with respect to political ads is like the fact that we have no idea what kind of messages are being sent to people on Facebook. And we even had voter suppression ads. The only reason we know about that is because the Trump campaign actually bragged that they were sending out voter suppression ads to African Americans on Facebook to keep them from voting. But we haven't seen what they say. Maybe they're false information. We have no idea. It's completely opaque. So I was calling for, show us the ads. Show us all of them. Let me, as a journalist, look to see if you're sending different messages to different people, if you're sending false information to people. What kind of manipulation is this? And we know it's propaganda. That's kind of understood.
Well, advertising is propaganda.
Yeah, and political advertising.
Yeah.
But I think it enters an even more dangerous territory when you can tailor your message to exactly the person who is going to see it and no one else is going to see it. And that's why I worry about that. So just this week, I heard that Facebook has agreed to do something along these lines. And that's really good news.
I'm reminded as you talk about that of another book I read recently, which is Tim Wu's book about the attention merchants. And basically what you're describing is what advertisers have been trying to do for 100 years now, which is A, to attract our attention, and B, to talk to only likely prospects.
Exactly.
And technology has been, sort of a golden window into that promised land for them, not for us.
For them, not for us. I would argue that we should just make it illegal to tailor political advertisement. I feel like we've already got enough evidence that it's a bad idea. Like we should just not let them decide exactly who this is going to be seen by. We should say you can show the ad to everyone or no one or a random selection of people, but you can't decide who should see this.